Really? I mean, really? Really? Sherlock Gnomes. The sequel of Romeo and Juliet. A sequel of a movie that nobody asked for. Not even me. How did that happen? Okay, it's been 8 years since that movie came out, Romeo and Juliet. I saw it 8 years ago also on a video that I had while I was studying in Vancouver. And guess what? I didn't like that movie. It was pretty bad. The animation was subpar. It was just a rehash of the Shakespearean tale of Romeo and Juliet, except that they're garden gnomes, and they push out on the tragedy. There's more to that than Romeo and Juliet, and many people didn't get the joke. But damn, Romeo and Juliet suck. And the only thing I kind of remember from that movie that I was only a little bit amusing is hearing Hulk Hogan making the lawnmower commercials. That's it. I never asked for that movie, and I never heard if that movie was at least successful or something like that. It just went out of our head saying that, yeah, there's some direct-to-video stuff that there is. But somehow, apparently it came out like a weed and decided to make a sequel out of it. But not about Romeo and Juliet. They're just there. They just decided to make a story about Sherlock Gnomes. I was dreading to watch this movie, but since it's kind of now a little bit of my job to watch even that movies, I was kind of dreading. So finally I decided today to go watch it at least on a matinee so I can get my tickets cheaper. And let me tell you this movie, it sucks. Sherlock Gnomes suck. It totally suck. But there are some things that I want to give it credit from the last movie, but that's nothing. That's nothing because we're talking about a movie that is a sequel of a subpar movie. How can you do that? So the only thing I can give out about Sherlock Gnomes is, and just hear me this, because this is probably the only thing I could say that is good about this movie, is that at least on the story, while mediocre on storytelling, at least it tried to do something creative on the narrative instead of rehashing a story from a Shakespeare like Romeo and Juliet, and they decided to make it kid friendly. But that's not saying much. It's still shoehorned in the stuff that made Sherlock Holmes popular kind of out of a reference. And they just go along with it. The movie just kind of just decided to go on a base of the movie, and it goes out of pilot. And you know what? Remember that I say that I can forgive cliches as long as they make it entertaining? Not in this case, because because the pacing is still so predictable, and but to the point that it's kind of boring. The characters, I didn't care. I'm jumping a little bit too much on what I don't like about this movie. But okay, let me put my mind at ease and let's go over with it. Let's go piece by pieces why this movie is underwhelming, let's say. So, Sherlock Gnomes. Apparently, this is a movie that wanted to be about Sherlock Holmes, but they wanted to keep it as gnomes. But for marquee value, they just added the Romeo and Juliet thing. And it feels more like a Romeo and Juliet movie than a Sherlock Gnome movie. Pick up your mind. You want to make one or the other. And besides, why would I want to spend my life watching a movie about Romeo and Juliet when that wasn't a good movie in the first place? So the story is that, yeah, Romeo and Juliet and their owner, their garden gnomes, they have a little bit of Toy Story rules. Let's say that they can move, they turn into statues. So what happened is that they moved to London apparently, and then Romeo and Juliet apparently kind of becomes the ruler of the new garden, because apparently there's a rule that for each new garden the parents, I don't know how they procreate, let's leave it aside, they assign them as leaders. And so after a mishap happens here and there, all the gnomes except for Romeo and Juliet, they disappear. They kind of went missing, and that is until they stumble with Sherlock Gnomes, which is this Sherlock Holmes knockoff, played by Johnny Depp, and of course his assistant Watson. And of course it has the typical trope of, that these two teams, they team up, they have their incompatibilities and all this stuff. But the main thing is that for a movie called Sherlock Gnomes, he doesn't feel like he is the center of the movie. It feels like he is more like a element of the franchise. It's kind of like, for example, you have a show called Naruto, and then the whole story it forgets that it's about Naruto, and they made a movie. You know what? Scratch that. Imagine if they make a movie called Sasuke, and then we don't cut the movie. It shoehorns in Naruto. That's how I felt how this film is. And it is very predictable, very talkative, because they don't shut the freak up. But at least I'll say that they toned down a little bit with the gnome puns. They just drop it all off on there, and it's just about visual gags, awkward conversations here and there. Nothing more, nothing less, and they also do the typical trap that when they try to make a moment of action or some kind of emotional moment, they always put in some kind of pop music or something like that. In this case, I think there's Elton John music, because I think that what I heard, he also produced the film. What's with Elton John and his fascination with garden gnomes, if I might ask? And come to think of it, there is a cameo of a Elton John garden gnome. So technically, this is a chase movie that trying to place out the basics of a Sherlock Holmes movie. In this case, Sherlock Holmes and his crew. Okay, Sherlock Gnomes, sorry. They are chasing the clues of Sherlock Gnomes, Sherlock Holmes' biggest arch enemy, which is and it's called Moriarty, like the main villain of the Sherlock Holmes books. Even though Moriarty, I think that he never shows up in the movies, he just kind of known there. Oh, and by the way, the Moriarty on the Sherlock Gnome film is a pie mascot. Yes, it is a mascot of a pie company that he acts in kind of insane, destructive insane. He just wanted trying to channel the Joker. But personally, I think he's more like a bastardization of the Pillsbury Duff Boy if he was insane, and with a mix of Penny from the Amazing World of Gumball. That's how he looks like. And yeah, he is technically the main villain, but in a way he technically kind of dies at the beginning of the movie. But I was kind of expecting that he was going to come back, because it didn't even show his death or something like that. And guess what? I was kind of predicting what was going to be because of the whole theme that they wanted to shoehorn into this movie. Apparently the movie tried to give us the moral that you have to take that for a team, you have to care for the other one instead of the other ones, and you should not take for granted your friends or your teammate in this case. Like in the case of, for example, there is this thing that Sherlock Gnomes is not taking consideration of Watson. He takes all the credit and all this stuff, and Watson is being hurt that he's been treated like a nobody, like Sherlock Gnomes. Isn't Sherlock Holmes supposed to be a gentleman, and Dr. Watson supposed to be very humble? Okay, this is the kind of the movie logic aside. And also we got which kind of put in contrast with Romeo and Juliet, in which when they become the ruler of that, Juliet wants to work making the garden better, and Romeo's like, hey, you're not being talkative, you're not paying attention to me and all this stuff, you kind of try to avoid me and all this stuff. Dude! You've been in a garden. How much time in the garden? Like 2 hours or 1? I mean, why do you make a conflict out of something that kind of lasted for 2 hours? I mean, even when he almost fumbled or something like that to get a rose for her and all this stuff, and he's saying that I love you, you weren't paying attention to me or something like that. Juliet kind of begins to say that, hey, the garden needs work. You can wait. Yeah, of course. I mean, I know that we have to balance things out, but there is something called responsibility. There's something called responsibility. When you're working, you are working. And there is a time and a place for work and then snuggle around and play around. The movie didn't do that. Mostly on the the Romeo and Juliet part, because the Sherlock Gnomes and Watson part, something was hidden that could have been at least something that I can forgive on the thematic, but no. No, it's just shoehorned in, and the way the movie, it feels more like it wants to be grand, with full of chase scenes and all that stuff. When it tries to be emotional, it's overshadowed by so much style and substance and so much action that it doesn't let sink in the emotion, to the point that I predicted that Dr. Watson was going to be the villain. And yes, that's what happened. It's shown that Dr. Watson was being the villain because he was butthurt that Sherlock Gnomes didn't pay attention and it kind of disrespected him. So I can understand that, but then they tried to toss off this thematic when Dr. Watson was betrayed by apparently his lackeys, which are, guess what? Gargoyles. Dragon gargoyles, and then it is shown that the gargoyles was working all along for Moriarty. And that comes up a little bit too out of the blue and with no build-up. It didn't feel like a build-up. It's just kind of like, hey, I'm the villain. I'm the villain. Shit, jeez Louise. Okay, what else I can talk about this film? Alright, what can I say? Oh yeah, well, the jokes weren't funny. They tried to make it funny, but they weren't funny. I mean, here's the thing. I went to the movie theater and sadly, it was packed with children. And guess what? No laughters. Nobody laughed on this movie. Even though I did chuckle on one sarcastic joke that there was in the movie. But it was kind of like a pity chuckle out of it. It was after Romeo and Juliet. They are crowned king and queen of the garden by the parents. And there was this know-it-all gnome in which he just sarcastically say, "Yay, nepotism." I just kind of give a smirk out of it because I know that it's a lame joke, but I'm kind of glad that it was kind of self-aware. Another thing that I kind of get bothered by the Romeo in this movie is that sometimes it feels like it has this weird buildup of the world around it. For example, we kind of see this news broadcast on a human TV, saying that hey, gnomes disappear all over the place and all this stuff, and yeah, it's been on a human TV, and apparently the newscaster say that, well, that wasn't so much of a busy day. Dude, if the news was that bored, why don't they just go find some other things that could happen? Like, for example, okay, let's say if it's in London, probably there is a farm that some cow give milk cheese somehow, and then that will be much more interesting than gnomes disappearing, garden gnomes, I mean. Okay, what else I can say? Oh yeah, it also tries to shoehorn in also a lot of the Sherlock Holmes mythologies, and like they made a callback to the Hound of the Baskervilles or the Chinese Japanese part of Sherlock Holmes, and in this case Sherlock Gnomes. And they have Irene, of course. Irene apparently is a Barbie doll of all people. But one of the things that I feel that they kind of fail in one way or another in the mythology is a little bit the physics. Well, the characters do feel like they're made of ceramic or something like that. Sometimes I don't buy how sometimes they interact between each other, because the way they interact and the way how they feel in a way, sometimes they feel like they're hard on their texture, but there are times that when they touch each other they feel that they are soft or something like that. And like, I think there's moments in which I kind of noticed that mostly during fight scene between Sherlock Gnomes and Moriarty, in which when Sherlock Holmes hit Moriarty, he feels like he's just been hit in the stomach or something like that, like it is made of flesh and blood and organs instead of ceramic. And at the end of the movie, apparently Sherlock Gnomes breaks his leg, and here I am questioning, how the hell does he have his leg broken when gnomes, if they're made of ceramic, they don't have bones to break? I mean, movie, make up your mind. Make up your mind, what kind of physics are you dealing with? Are they real gnomes like David the Gnome? Or there are lawn gnomes? Because I actually feel that I prefer to see a continuation of the lawn gnomes from Freakazoid more than Romeo and Juliet. You know, come to think of it, we should make that. Somebody should make a second part of the lawn gnomes of Freakazoid. I prefer to watch that than, than again, Romeo and Juliet, or in this case, Sherlock Gnomes. That's all I have to say. It's just so underwhelming. It's underwhelming. It's not. I'm not gonna say that it's the worst thing that I have seen. I get something that got me infuriated, but I wasn't infuriated at the movie. I just kind of baffled to see that some kind of movie that didn't deserve a sequel gets a sequel. But apparently, it's now a written rule that in movies that wasn't popular does indeed get a sequel, I'll say. But okay, you think that how you pander your younger audience? Nah, I don't believe it. It just this is just like I said, a fertilizer of a movie. Oh, and speaking of which, some things that are on the trailer are not in the movie. At least somehow I'm also glad that they took out that fart joke that from the trailer and all that. You know what? I'm getting tired of this. I'm getting tired of talking about Sherlock Gnomes. I don't recommend it. If you're curious enough because you just saw the first movie, it could be a rental, I'll say, but only for the curious. But I wouldn't give my money to that. I prefer. I rather this movie. I'm lost for words. Sorry about that. Again, this is totally unscripted. Sherlock Gnomes. It's not worthwhile. Case closed.